Hello, mental magicians. Welcome back. We often mention Kriya Shakti, the power to create, in these lessons, but there is also Icha Shakti. In Hinduism, this force, this will force, is referred by the Sanskrit term Icha, I-C-C-H-A, Icha Shakti, which can be translated as will power. In metaphysics and occult philosophy, will is that which governs the manifested universes in eternity. Will is the one and sole principle of abstract mental motion, or its ensouling essence. The will is in fact the first of all powers. The will is the property of all spiritual beings and displays itself in them. The more actively, the more they are freed from the material world, from matter. This force is present not only in human beings, but also in animals and even in inanimate objects. That's from the Theosophical Glossary. There's also a must-see Sunday night course we have here on the Living Theosophy channel. It's Unfolding Consciousness, exploring the divine forces in the human being. That's what we're talking about here. The awakening of latent, which means dormant, faculties and powers of consciousness, where we take a look at Perennial Philosophy's, Theosophy's explanation and investigation of the unexplained laws of nature and the powers latent in mankind. So remember, please do no harm with these abilities. They're very real. Do no harm, and do not use this to take something or someone that belongs to another person. Don't do that. Other than that, you can have the life that you desire. Whatever you want, you can create it. Now, we left off last week with the mastery of the will and the testimony of wise men. So let's get to it. We're in underlying force, and now the will, the projector of mentative force. Now, as we have seen, the use of the will as the projector of mentative currents is the real base of all mental magic, under whatever name you want to call it, all right? And the phase of will known as telementation, that's thoughts from one mind to another. That's the form, the results of which strike the observer with the greatest force. The will currents of a strong man reaches out far beyond the limits of his brain and influences people and things, causing them to be inclined toward his wishes. Many men have worked their will upon others from far away, and much that is known as thought transference, telepathy, mental influence, etc., is really the working of the will currents over space and time. What occultists have called thought forms, etc., they're really manifestations of the energy of the will. Will is a living force that can be projected and operated at a distance. It has the property of reacting and acting upon others and permitting them with a mental essence that is not their own unless they repel the invasion, and we're going to talk about how you can do that soon, or fortify themselves against it. So the wonders of will. Desire and will are more elementary forms of mentation than thought, more primary. They underlie thought. So without desire and will, there is no thought. There's not going to be a thought. Feeling ever precedes thought. And desire and will form the essence of what we call feeling. So you know Neville Goddard, the feeling is the secret, it's desire and will. Many people almost altogether live on the feeling plane. That's it. They exercise very little thought. The infant desires and wills before it can think. Desire and will is really the medium from which thought is evolved. A modern writer on mysticism has said that there's no force in the universe except will force, meaning, of course, that the great natural force of energy called will, of which desire and will in man are expressions. Desire is a natural force and can be used, managed, controlled, and directed just like any other natural force. And what we know as willpower is the positive phase of directed desire. In the East, they have trained and cultivated this willpower to degrees that seem miraculous to the Western world. And by this trained willpower, they perform so-called miracles that amaze the Western scientist. But even the West has its men of iron will, whose influences are felt on all sides and whose power is openly acknowledged by the public. In the East, these men are generally hermits and sages, while in the West here, they are generally men of action, leaders, captains of industry, etc. So here we have now the masculine and feminine energy. All right. Mentative energy is the essence of all mental influence and other forms of the mental control of one person by another. It includes positive, forcing, impelling, compelling, driving, which is will, and its motive pole, all right, and its emotive pole, that is attracting, drawing, pulling, luring, charming, fascinating, something that we call desire. Will and desire. Mentative energy manifests in the phases of both desire and will. Desire and will, as we generally use these terms, for it is composed of the elements of both. Will may be said to represent the masculine side of mentative energy and desire the feminine side, the receptor. Now, it may help you to find and fix in your mind the attributes and the characteristics and the nature of these two phases of mentative energy by associating them with the idea of masculine and feminine. I wish, he says here, Atkinson says, he wishes that you would learn to think of desire force as the warm, ardent, which means passionate, fiery, forceful energy that underlies the manifestations of mentative energy, and the willpower as the cold, keen, strong, directing controller and projector of the energy. By fixing these mental images in your mind, and I'm doing this with you, all right, I'm doing this with you, you will be better able to manifest the two phases when the occasion arises. The directing will, all right, the will, directing will. Besides its office as the director of the energy, the will serves a very important office as the restrainer of desire force. It, when under control of the I of the person and taking the suggestion of reason and judgment, is able to prevent one from expressing undesirable or hurtful desires. It refuses to project this desire force or to allow the desire to take effect in action. It also turns back the desire upon itself and refuses to allow it to manifest. It is the utmost importance that the individual acquires a mastery over our will. For by doing so, we'll not only be able to express our desires with the greatest force and effect, but we'll also be able to restrain any hurtful or selfish desires and to prevent our manifestation upon the plane of action. So next week, we go into the projecting will, and speaking of reason, judgment, and restrain, we've got to be able to use this wisely, all right? You can't just have willy-nilly. That's the thing with these law of attraction gurus. They're talking about you can have anything and everything is a projection of you. There's very little responsibility being taught in them. So that's why I brought this book forward. It is The Secret of Mental Magic, written down by William Walker Atkinson. Remember that the brain can transform energy into physical substances and states. We must learn to use this wisely. Please, please, please do no harm, and do not use this to take something or someone that does not belong to you. If you want to learn more about these, I'm going to do these every week on Saturdays, and on Sunday nights we have the Unfolding Consciousness study about the dormant faculties in humans. This is the Perennial Philosophy or Theosophy, being able to explain these latent and dormant abilities, these psychic powers that are in all of us, and how to use them to better life here on earth. For good. We're going to use them for good. All right, they can be used for selfish purposes. They are being used for selfish purposes. I am here to encourage you to use them for the best interest of all beings on our planet. And you too. Use them wisely. I love you, and I'll see you next week.